I remember the moment like it was yesterday, standing there barefoot on my porch, coffee still warm in my hand, and staring at that neon yellow notice taped to my door. It was like a slap in the face. The paper read, "Violation, yard not maintained. Daily fine $100 until resolved." And there it was, my name typed neatly at the top, my address right under it, and the signature of the Cedar Ridge Estates Homeowners Association in tidy black ink. If you've ever had the displeasure of dealing with an HOA, you'll recognize that font. It's the font of polite threats. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who lets his place fall apart. I bought my house on Sycamore Bend 5 years ago after my divorce. I needed stability, something I could rely on. Cedar Ridge is the kind of place where everything matches. The mailboxes, the shutters, even the shades of beige on the houses are probably pre-approved. Quiet, orderly, safe. After the chaos of my marriage, I thought that kind of order would be comforting. That morning, though, I stepped outside to inspect the crime scene. And there they were. 3 tiny dandelions, stubbornly poking their little yellow heads up near my mailbox. Bright, cheerful little things, and completely harmless. The rest of my yard was just like every other on the block, neatly trimmed grass, straight edges, not a leaf out of place. But those 3 flowers? They'd thrown the entire neighborhood into chaos. I couldn't help but laugh. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe the HOA had messed up. So, I called the number on the notice and left a polite voicemail. No response. By that afternoon, my neighbor Carl, walking his labradoodle of course, waddled over and nodded at the paper still taped to my door. "You get one too?" he asked. I blinked. "You mean this is a thing?" Carl shrugged in that tired suburban dad way. "Yeah, new president. She's cracking down. Says property values depend on uniformity." Her name? Melissa Hardwick. Late 40s, sharp haircut, pastel tennis skirts even when she wasn't playing tennis. She moved in 2 years ago, and within 6 months, she was running the HOA like a corporate takeover. I didn't dislike her at first. I barely knew her. But this felt personal, like someone had walked onto my lawn and told me I wasn't measuring up. The next HOA meeting was Thursday in the clubhouse, and I decided I'd go. I put on a clean button-down shirt, brought photos of my yard on my phone, and told myself this would be simple, rational, civil. The clubhouse smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and burnt coffee. About 20 people sat in folding chairs while Melissa stood at the front beside a projector screen with the words Community Standards Review on it. She looked like a schoolteacher running the class, all business. When they opened the floor for violations, she called my name. "Mr. Turner," she said, glancing at her clipboard, "your property has been cited for failure to maintain lawn consistency in accordance with Section 4B. I stood up. "With all due respect, I mow every week. I edge, I water. There are 3 dandelions by the mailbox. That's it." A few people chuckled. Melissa didn't. "Rules are rules," she said, lips tight. "Those dandelions disrupt the visual harmony of the neighborhood." Visual harmony. Like we were an art installation instead of a bunch of people with mortgages. I tried again. "I'll remove them tonight. Can we just void the fine?" She tilted her head slightly. "The violation stands until the property meets standards. Perhaps you should consider hiring a professional landscaper." Her lips curled into a smirk. I don't know why, but that smirk hit me wrong. Maybe it was the way she said professional, like I was some incompetent bachelor who couldn't handle basic responsibility. Maybe it was everything else in my life that I'd swallowed quietly up until that point. But something about being told my lawn wasn't good enough flipped a switch. I didn't argue anymore. I just sat down and nodded as she moved on to the next violation. Someone had left their trash out 20 minutes too long. On the walk home, the neighborhood looked different. Those identical lawns, green, neat, and uniform, suddenly felt eerie. Like they were just blank spaces devoid of life. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, the $100 a day fine felt more absurd. It wasn't about the money. I could pull those dandelions up in 30 seconds. It was about the principle. It was about being told that perfection meant sameness, that nature itself needed to be trimmed into submission. And somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m., I stopped feeling annoyed and started feeling inspired. If they wanted uniformity, maybe what they needed was contrast. The next morning, I drove past the hardware store, then kept going straight, out toward the county nursery about 20 miles away. The kind of place with handwritten signs and dusty pickup trucks. An older woman named Diane helped me. "What are you looking to plant?" she asked. I looked at the rows of wildflowers swaying in the breeze, the bright chaos of it all. "I'm not sure yet," I said, "but I think I'm done with grass." Diane smiled slowly, like she understood more than I'd said out loud. By the time I left, my truck bed was full. Native wildflower mixes, comb flowers, black-eyed Susans, milkweed, clover, sunflower starters. Even a few slender bamboo shoots Diane promised would thrive along a fence line if I kept them contained. Driving back into Cedar Ridge, I felt a strange mix of rebellion and calm. I wasn't planning vandalism. I wasn't breaking laws. I was just planting something different. That weekend, I started digging. By Saturday afternoon, my front yard looked like I had committed a crime against suburbia. The neat, obedient rectangle of grass was gone in wide, uneven patches. The soil underneath was dark and damp, almost breathing after years of being smothered by uniform turf. I stood there, shovel in hand, sweat running down my back, and for the first time since that yellow notice appeared, I felt something close to peace. Carl wandered over again, eyebrows raised so high they nearly disappeared under his cap. "You renovating?" he asked carefully. "Something like that," I said, wiping dirt off my forearm. "Going native?" he asked, looking at the bare earth, then back at the identical lawns. "You know she's going to lose her mind, right?" "I'm not breaking any rules," I replied. "It'll be maintained. Just differently maintained." That word, differently, hung in the air like a dare. I spent all weekend tearing out the rest of the grass, not in rage, but with intention. This wasn't vandalism. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a redesign. By Sunday evening, Cedar Ridge had its first front yard that didn't look like a golf course. Melissa showed up Monday morning. I was out front with a hose when her white SUV slowed to a stop. The window rolled down, and there she was, oversized sunglasses, perfectly pressed blouse, lips pressed tighter than usual. "What is this?" she asked, gesturing broadly at the soil and seedlings. "Landscaping?" I said calmly. "Still in progress." "This is not compliant with community standards," she said, her voice tight. "Actually," I replied, "I reviewed the bylaws. Section 3C specifies lawns must be maintained and free of debris. It doesn't mandate turf grass." Her jaw tightened. "The expectation is clearly uniform green lawns," she said. "Expectation isn't the same as written rule," I said. There was a long pause, and I could see the gears turning in her head. She finally said, "We will be reviewing this." And she drove off. For the next few weeks, nothing dramatic happened. The seeds sprouted. Tiny green shoots pushed upward like they had something to prove. Neighbors started slowing down when they walked by. A couple raised eyebrows, but then something unexpected happened. The bees came. I hadn't realized how quiet the neighborhood had been before. When the first flowers opened, bright yellows and purples bursting against the brown soil, the air changed. There was a low hum, soft but constant. Butterflies followed. Kids started coming by after school, sitting on the stone border, watching the insects like it was a nature documentary playing out in real time. Then came the second letter. This one wasn't yellow, but certified mail. Notice of noncompliance. Cedar Ridge had its first eco-friendly front yard, and the HOA wasn't happy. Melissa wasn't having it. At the next meeting, she said, "Finally, your actions have created division in this community." I stood up. "With respect, I've maintained my yard. It's landscaped, it's clean, it supports pollinators. I haven't violated any written rule. The only thing I've violated is an unwritten expectation that everything here should look the same." Melissa didn't have a prepared response. I slid a letter across the table, proof that my yard had been certified by the state as a wildlife habitat. And just like that, the entire room went quiet. Melissa hesitated. "This certification," she said, "does not exempt you from community standards." "It doesn't exempt me from maintaining the property," I replied. "But it does mean any attempt to destroy or penalize a registered habitat could open the association up to legal review." The room felt electric. Melissa read the certification letter 3 times, and when she finally looked up, I knew. This wasn't about my yard anymore. It was about who gets to decide what beauty looks like. And that was it. The HOA went silent. A week later, they sent a notice saying my landscaping met minimum maintenance requirements. No further action would be taken. A few weeks after that, the environmental agency came to inspect. They even sent an advisory to the HOA about the protected status of my yard. And suddenly, something started to change in the neighborhood. More houses began replacing patches of their turf with native plants. Melissa started walking slower past my house, not even glancing at the yard anymore. By the time summer came, my front yard was fully transformed. Sunflowers taller than my mailbox, bamboo thickening into a soft green wall, and the bees had made it their home. Even Mrs. Ellison softened, admitting it wasn't as wild as she'd feared. But here's the kicker. Next spring, 3 other houses on the block started planting wildflowers, too. The HOA, embarrassed, updated its guidelines to include native landscaping. They didn't mention my yard directly, but they didn't have to. It was a small victory. And one last thing, sitting on my porch one morning, looking out at my wild yard, I realized something. Sometimes small conflicts expose bigger truths. And that was the real victory. So let me ask you this. If you were in my shoes, would you have just pulled the weeds and paid the fine? Or would you have pushed back, knowing it might create tension with your neighbors? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because I'm curious, how far would you go to make a point?